innovation doesn't mean, launching the next generation AI thing. It is, doing something different for the betterment of what you're trying to solve for in a different way. And I think the cultural differences across countries, there's various styles that exist across the world, and leaning in and utilizing the best parts of all of them is a skill all by itself, I think.
This is Parallel Perspectives, an NRI podcast where curiosity meets courage. In this series, we explore the idea that true understanding doesn't live in certainty. It's revealed through contrast. Hosted by Nathan Trail, NRI's Chief Revenue Officer, we sit down with challengers, innovators, deep thinkers, and purposeful builders to unpack the paradoxes, trade-offs, and bold choices that shape how we live, lead, and grow.
May 14th, 2018. Does that date ring a bell?
I'm never going to forget that day in my life.
Exactly. That was the day the U.S. Supreme Court overturned PASPA, enabling a path for sports betting nationwide and kicking off one of the wildest scrambles in business and tech that we've seen in recent memory. Since then, the industry has exploded. With market share up for grabs, it's completely reshaped how millions of fans engage with sports, data, and entertainment. And leading that charge is FanDuel. On this inaugural episode of Parallel Perspectives, I couldn't be more excited to sit down with one of the top technologists in the space and a good friend of mine, Shane Sweeney, Senior Vice President of Technology at FanDuel. From building resilient systems that scale during Super Bowl surges to launching personalized features that engage nearly 15 million monthly users, Shane and his team are redefining what it means to engineer the fan experience. Shane, welcome to the show.
Delighted to be here. Thank you so much for the invite.
I'm going to dive right in as we'll get to a lot of your background as we progress. So, Shane, FanDuel's DNA is rooted in betting, risk and reward. Those dynamics show up in leadership as well. So, my first question, in an industry built on risks that's calculated, have you personally ever taken a professional swing that felt like it might backfire? However, in the end, it changed the game for you.
Yeah, I think my career has been varied over maybe a 25, 30-year time span. I could go very back to all the way back to the beginning. I actually didn't think I wanted to be in technology. I went to university and studied science, chemistry, biology, realizing very quickly that maybe I need to reimagine my life choices because I was a techie from a young age, and I think making the big move to say, actually, do you know what? Maybe science isn't what I should do, and actually go back to my passion. And so I think the idea was I needed to try a few things, and I think worked across, helping individual companies to helping many companies in consultancy roles. And I think actually that variety and the diversity of roles has always been an element of risk when you move roles in particular. And I think that's what makes it more exciting. I think I've always lived in a world where I want to go to work and be excited about what I do. And I've always had this concern that I'll go to work and have to do the same thing over and over again. And, even just that concept and being not afraid to accept, you know what, it's time to do something different here.
So not every bet is data driven, right? Sometimes instinct and timing is more important or just as important. So how do you personally decide when to bet on an idea, a person, or a new approach?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And actually, I think the simple answer is you don't really know. And, there's a world where analysis paralysis kicks in if you want to get too much data. And maybe it's not quite a gut feel, but I think experience and learned experience over a long period of time. I feel I'm a good judge of character. I feel I'm a good judge of general risks, and actually knowing a little bit about a lot of things means you can also make a slightly more informed decision.
Yeah.
Just that balance of experience and gut. At the end of the day, you just can't have all the data that you really want. And if you chase after data the whole time, you'll never make a decision. And I think in my world, indecision is the worst decision that you can make because you are consciously choosing to not decide a path with being indecisive. And I personally think it's easier to make a decision and course correct than it is to say, do you know what, I need to have 50 more pieces of information in order to make a more informed view. So
Yeah, I think that's really good. I think sometimes I like the analysis paralysis thing because sometimes folks can really just take so much time to make a decision, they actually lose the impact of making the actual decision. So much time has gone by, and sometimes it's better to just make the decision and accept the risk that it might not be right. And so I think that's really good advice. We're both in technology. FanDuel is having a revenue surge right now. So 1.67 billion in revenue in quarter one. Is that what I did? I read that correctly? Absolutely
yeah, it's about that.
crazy. That's insane because I don't know, 6 years ago, I don't even think you were in the billions for an annual. And it's somehow FanDuel has been able to figure out the formula to make sure product and technology keep up with demand. Technologies continuously to evolve on a rapid basis. So the next question I have for you is, with technology evolving fast, legacy actually is what really lasts. When you look back one day, what impact do you hope to have had at FanDuel beyond just tech stack and systems?
Yeah, for me, I actually think as a leader, what do I want my legacy to be? I want to be known as the person who helped others, actually. I think we have quite a number of core principles here at FanDuel. Winning with integrity is one of the big ones for me. And actually knowing that I think we're actually doing a very good job at building careers and creating a sustainable business. And it may be not at all clear at any moment of any day exactly where we're going to end up. But do I think we're on the right trajectory? Absolutely. And I think over the last 5 or 6 years, being part of, I've often described FanDuel as it's like being on a rocket ship. We are literally
Yeah.
uh, chasing after like things that didn't happen in this country up until 2018, and we are breaking new ground. And I think this experiences. I've worked for the Flutter organization for nearly 16 or 17 years, and actually this is a very different mode of operation than in most of the other parts of the world, mainly because I think the United States is is being leapfrogged because of the learnings that have occurred in this industry across the world. Responsible gaming is a key part to what we do. That is not how other parts of the world started, but I think the US is really trying to find that right balance. And again, being part of the journey and being not only the number one sports book and casino in the United States, but also being, you know, key a key leader in the space of responsible gaming, and you know putting the customer at the heart of everything that we do is basically, I couldn't be more prouder of the work that we're doing and the people that is doing it. My job is not really to build anymore. It's to enable the thousands of engineers that work here at FanDuel to build better and bigger things that are going to delight our customers.
Yeah, and I can attest to that, just having spent time with you and your team and even the product team at FanDuel and some of the other executives there. Responsible gaming, I don't feel is not, it's not just a mantra for you guys. It's a way of life. It's literally embed. What I love about it is you've embedded responsible gaming into your DNA. It's not just a fancy political term to avoid, your retribution. And I can attest that I've seen that in your office. And so I think that's great that's happening, even with the money that you guys pour back into the communities you get involved in. in California and in Atlanta, where some of your IT headquarters are. I certainly can attest to what I see from that.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And yeah, integrity and being true to yourself and living your own values. That's what I want to be known for. So
I love that. And you mentioned one thing that maybe a lot of the listeners don't know is FanDuel's owned by Flutter Entertainment, based in Dublin, based in
uh,
Edinburgh. Where is this?
no, Flutter is actually a global organization. We are now primarily listed on the New York Stock Exchange, but it's a company that started in Dublin in Ireland, and it grew through acquisition and had many headquarters around the world for the various brands that we have. There's multiple brands around the world that actually make up the entire Flutter ecosystem. And yeah, but it actually started off as a little small company in Ireland, and I personally think it's one of the the key one of the biggest successful companies to come out of Ireland in many years.
If we want, maybe let's rewind the tape for just a second. Before all the titles and before all the scale of what's happening with Flutter and FanDuel, what, in your mind, was there a defining moment early in your life or in your career when you knew technology would be your path?
One of the defining moments in for me personally right now is I actually, and I say this to a few people who start here in FanDuel, I actually made a decision to join the Flutter group many years ago on the basis that it would allow me to move to another part of the world, particularly the United States. And
Yeah.
actually, the Flutter Group has been fantastic. It's a great company for creating opportunities because it's in an industry that's growing. I've worked all across the world, and I've visited. Our Australian businesses, our Indian businesses, and all across the European business. And when I was given the opportunity to come to the US, it was a little bit of a no brainer actually, and it
Yeah.
was I genuinely was one of the primary reasons why I joined this organization. And I think that's a key moment.
Yeah, and I think you spent some time in Australia as well, right? Was
Yeah,
it Sydney or Melbourne or where were you?
in Melbourne, our brand over there is Sportsbet. Again, the number one sports book in Australia, online sports book in Australia, and great team down there. And I spent a couple of months helping them, and brought the family along with me for because that's typically what I started to do over the last couple of years. So they got to experience it as well. So.
And having worked on both sides of the Atlantic, across different cultures, uh, just curious, your global how has that global exposure shaped how you lead and think about innovation?
I think for me, there's a couple of parts to that question. One, the different cultures across the world are really exciting just to learn about, right? And if you think about, why is it important to learn? Like getting different perspectives and I don't assume that we have all the answers to all the questions. But what I do know is that as a team, we can identify new and creative ways to solve problems. And I think different people and different styles actually contribute to innovation just as much as the execution of a piece of work. And you know, innovation doesn't mean launching the next generation AI thing. It is doing something different for the betterment of what you're trying to solve for in a different way. And I think the cultural differences across countries, there's various styles that exist across the world, and leaning in and utilizing the best parts of all of them is a skill all by itself, I think. And knowing when to use one and when to use the other is no different to a leadership styles discussion. You don't want to be you know always in the same mode, and always thinking in the same way, because ultimately somebody else is going to be thinking something different, and they're going to overtake you very quickly. So yeah, it's important to make sure you have that diversity of thought.
You're in and out of Portugal a lot. I think you have a team in Portugal as well as Scotland, obviously Ireland. What are some of the other countries you're in and out of on a frequent basis?
So across the globe, European headquarters in or European locations in Edinburgh, London, Dublin, Portugal, Romania, Bulgaria. We have a very large facility over in India, or a number of facilities over in India. Um, the Australia has a big hub, and a very recent acquisition has just brought on another large cohort of employees in Brazil. So it really is across all primary continents.
I'm just curious, actually, this is a question that just came up. Why do you think it is? Wouldn't it be easier to just consolidate everything? What's the benefit of having so many different centers? Is it a culture thing? Is it being close to your clients? Or is it different types of skill sets? Having so many different centers, Portugal, Romania, Australia.
Um, there's actually some very tactical problems. The ability to hire people at scale in one location is a challenge. There's a finite amount of resources. So actually parallelizing and identifying what we have, which are centers of excellence. And those centers predominantly span around how our business works. But there is technology centers of excellence where, we have quite a lot of our platform and sports engineers, for example, in Portugal. Anybody who's building those sports products, our other brands across the world, they do have single locations, but at the end of the day, it does come back to readily available access to top talent. And I think one of the key differentiators in the locations that we've picked is they are great locations for getting access to top talent. Atlanta, in particular, with all of the universities, top talent isn't just about getting the most senior people. It's about getting the hungry, startup style, graduates coming in who are really excited about
Yeah.
coming into their first job, who haven't had to be onboarded into multiple companies. That creates constraints on them in some cases, where people are more open and more available, maybe in the younger years of their careers. So.
Yeah, it made me think of kind of what we're going through right now, and the kind of larger macroeconomic situation with tariffs coming out of the United States. Is one of our largest partners, Cisco. Uh, they several years ago diversified their manufacturing facilities outside of China, which they're it is a great situation right now because now they're not as burdened by some of the tariff situations in China, where other companies put all their manufacturing, everything in one country, not knowing that one day this might happen. And so consumers and the companies are paying the price. So I think diversifying, the world's seeing you can't just move a manufacturing facility overnight from Vietnam or China over to the United States. Same with talent and skills and just kind of cultural elements that are required to deliver a certain type of service. I think you guys have done a great job of diversifying that, and so I'm glad you called that out. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about operating uh, some of the high performance business that you're in. So, operating at one of the highest performance thresholds in tech, where milliseconds actually matter, and systems need to flex on demand. And we've talked about this. FanDuel has to stay ahead of the curve on technology, and ensure that betting is fair and equitable across the playing field, not just for consumers, but for FanDuel itself. As we talked about, if someone has an edge on maybe some sort of a game that's going on right now, you guys need to always constantly stay on top of that, and that's changing on a daily basis. On the for technology side of the house, when millions of users hit the platform at once, you just get really one shot because the game doesn't repeat it. You don't get to hit rewind on a match or a race or a horse race or something like that, unfortunately. How do you design infrastructure that can handle Super Bowl traffic, but still run lean enough and cost efficient enough on a regular Monday?
How do we do it? It's really hard.
Yeah.
um, um, I'll state one of our company principles that is simpler is always better. And actually, I think breaking down the problem, yes, you could think that that's a really hard problem to solve, and to be clear, it is, right? but it's also can be broken down into 100 little problems. And actually, each one of those has a much simpler approach to it. And it's the combined effort of all of those that actually make up the very creative solutions that our fantastic engineers here at FanDuel solve every day. And if there's a big daunting problem, the first thing we do is we break it down. And we have many constraints that we have to operate on. Again, we have to actually build data centers in every state that we operate in for our sports book and our casino business.
Yeah.
And that all by itself is a logistical challenge, right? And actually, it's going against what everybody in the world wants to do with infrastructure, which is move more to the cloud. And instead of saying, "Oh my God, how are we going to build an infrastructure that's hugely scalable?" We actually partnered with the biggest cloud company in the world, and we worked with them. And guess what? They gave us a solution, which was helping to give us their equipment in our data centers, and the Outpost technologies that we use. Actually, it looks like the cloud, it feels like the cloud. It just so happens to be in our data centers. And again, that's a
Yeah.
very simple way to not get bogged down on, what what storage am I going to need, or what CPU type am I going to need. They're all complexities that we just don't have time for. And
Yeah.
using partners appropriately and being able to just say, we trust that the hardware is correct, that allows us to focus on a number of things. One, making sure that we're focused on building the actual customer product and not getting distracted by how are we going to build the infrastructure. And two, it also gives us space to code very defensively. So actually, we build resilience
Yeah.
into our platform.
So I want to talk a little bit about work-life balance and how, since you said it's not always easy, and sometimes you have to do the things that you don't really need to do, but you do it because you want to make sure it's right. How do you manage work-life balance with your family? What does that look like for you? And I know it's different for you than most people, so I'm just curious how do you manage that? And
It's
yeah.
it's it's probably easier to scale for the Super Bowl. Being totally honest. No, I have a unique position. I took on this role a couple of years ago, and actually it was at a time when COVID was, at a time at the very beginning of COVID when, yeah, this COVID thing, it'll pass. It didn't pass, and actually I'd been working in the US. I've been working for a US company from Europe, and my family are still based over in Europe, mainly due to a variety of complexities that are life problems. My kids are older now, and it's hard to try and find the right time to do a transition. The biggest challenge actually is the freedom when they're not here. It allows me to really focus on work, but actually, what I'm giving up in reality is time with my family, which is precious, and I can't get that back, right? And I think all that means is when I am with my family, the work life balance really is fundamentally different. Where I would go on one side of the spectrum when they're not here, and be fully available and ready to go and operating at 150% all the time, constantly working, which again has some leadership challenges. You can't be seen as the person who's just always on. It sends the wrong message from a work life balance perspective. But when they are here, I try to find a very different balance, and uh, being very mindful and thoughtful of vacations and switching off is a key part of that. And I think that's that balance where, as a leader, my teams need to see that I have the ability to do that effectively. Because if I'm not, and I'm sort of setting an example that is inappropriate or unsustainable, I think it calls to the credibility of whether or not I am a good or a bad leader. So.
Well, no, I remember I remember one time I texted you to see if you wanted to grab an after work drink, and you said I'm watching a movie with my daughter, and I'm like, "Oh, is your daughter in the US?" You said no, she's in Ireland. I was like, "That's amazing." Like, you take the time to virtually watch a movie with your daughter. And so what it made me think of when I was actually overseas, and then my family was kind of in and out. it adds it's emotionally taxing as well on a father, on a dad, and on a husband when you aren't there and something stressful is going on. It's even probably triple as much stressful on us who are can't be there, and because you have no control, right? And
Yeah.
as a father or a husband, or if you're a mom or whatever, something's happening that is stressful at home. It's almost triple or quadruple as much stressful on yourself because you can't be there to help, and
Yeah.
you're on the phone call, you hang up. I remember one time, man, when I was in Singapore, when we first moved there, Michael, my son, I was in I think the Manila, Philippines, meeting with Jollibee Foods, and I was getting on the plane to fly back to Singapore, and my wife called and said, "Hey, Michael has gone missing," but it was right as the plane was taking off, and I was like, what the heck am I supposed to do? And so, finally got Wi-Fi, was texting, didn't get any responses. Long story short, he just missed the bus. But it stresses you out when you can't be physically with your family. And so it's a whole, I think people don't realize that unless they've been in that situation. And so, yeah,
Yeah. Agree.
go ahead.
And like in the context, so we talked again a little bit about the Super Bowl. That's in a work context, we want to win the moment that matters. The problem with work-life balance and this entire discussion is I'm missing the moments that matter in a lot of cases. And sometimes they're positive things that you're just missing out on. And others are, those emergency scenarios, which is even more problematic to deal with from an emotional perspective. And yeah, I completely agree. Whether or not my wife would agree with me that it's three or four times harder for me, um, I think the sentiment is it's more challenging, and it's definitely a different perspective where
Yeah.
I try to be in control as much as I can with from a work and from a life perspective, and being so far away. I can't really maintain that level of control that I feel comfortable with. Yeah.
Let's talk about FanDuel for the future. What's next for FanDuel, for the industry, for you? Uh, so looking ahead, maybe a few years, what's on your radar that maybe isn't on everyone else's yet?
I think we're at an interesting time for sports betting more generally in this country. I think the answering this question is like staring into a crystal ball. It could end up accelerating even further. There's still many states that are hopefully going to legalize over the next couple of years. That will continue to grow our business, quite substantially.
Yeah.
It could be that maybe we need to start pivoting and innovating in new and creative ways, and maybe we're close to being able to find the next big thing that's really going to shape the industry. And I think it's really hard to pinpoint what that might be right now. We obviously have lots of things that are going on internally, and the industry is also looking, things like AI. Again, it's easy to say that AI will shape the future for generations to come. I don't think we fully understand how it's going to shape businesses more generally. And you know where we were 5 years ago. I can only imagine where we're going to be in 5 years' time based on the progress that's been made. And it'll be
Yeah.
really difficult for me to say. I think the the ambition is to continue to maintain that position that we have, and to continue to grow, and to continue to lead by example in the industry is I think the simple way that I could answer that.
Yeah. And I think you guys are live in, is it 34 states? Do I have my
Uh,
facts
thir-
right?
34 across various different products. Yes,
Various different
not all
products.
not all states are equal. So our fantasy business, for example, is operating in more states than our sportsbook business, and our casino
Got it.
is only available in 5 or 6 states. But that's the varying nature. Like all of the products can just sort of evolve and morph in multiple different ways
Yeah.
over the next couple of
And
years.
yeah, and Kansas, I think, just went live in April. Was it April, or is it already gone live?
Kansas was a while ago. I
Okay.
would need to double check what
Maybe it
the
was.
last one was, but yeah, there's. there's always one or two a year that we go after, and yeah, we are at the mercy that the laws do need to be continually updated to allow us to operate in new states, and we're constantly trying to drive the narrative across the industry. So
That's great. So if we gave you one instant solve card, no politics, no blockers. If you could wave a magic wand and solve one technology organizational challenge instantly, what would it be?
oh God, I have no idea. Um, I think one of the biggest struggles that we have, again, as a business is growing so quickly, it also we're growing from a technology perspective so quickly, and technical debt is a problem for everybody.
Yeah.
And actually, we create technical debt every day, whether we like it or not, whether we understand it. What we do today at some point will be technical debt. And I think we constantly have to repay that debt. If I could wave a wand and fast forward and just catch up on the last 5 years of growth, because there's problems that we don't even know we have yet. But like if we could get rid of the things that we don't know about, which is a bit of an open-ended answer, like I genuinely think that this is an industry that we have to be very reactive to, and the growth is unpredictable. And I don't want to find that a decision that we made 3 years ago, which seemed like a great idea at the time, comes back to hurt us or to slow us down, that causes us to miss that next big moment.
Yeah, I think a lot of CIOs and CTOs, just in my experience, would agree with you. Technical debt is a major thing on people's minds. Shameless plug: NRI is top notch at solving for technical debt. um, but let's bring it back to you and your team. What excites you the most about FanDuel's next chapter from a tech and a product perspective?
Yeah, I think it comes down to a few things. One, I think we are really innovating in a new and meaningful way, and that means we're solving new problems, or we're solving old problems in new ways, which again is also a good thing. We are not standing still, and we are constantly trying to move forward and lead. And that's an exciting thing, and I think that will continue to excite me. I
Yeah.
don't go to work and do the same thing every day. Every day is a new day, and it's a new chapter, and it's a new set of problems that need to be solved. And I think we'll continue to do that. And the day that we run out of problems, I will happily retire. So,
Yeah. Well, I'm excited too because, technology is constantly changing and it's really tough for most companies to even keep up. I mean, generative AI and in and of itself, companies still haven't figured out how to properly use it. And so, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when FanDuel was just from a sports book perspective was really starting to take off, AI wasn't as prevalent in the marketplace, even though it's always kind of been there with LLMs and stuff. But now it's really in the front. And so keeping up with that is something that I'm sure is on your mind on a daily basis. So, yeah, I can only imagine. All right. I'm going to go into the last segment here called Quick Bets or Rapid Fire. So we're going to close out with a few fast and fun questions. Feel free to go rapid fire or you can expand. It's totally up to you. Are you ready?
sure.
Okay, here we go. If your engineering team created a drink in your honor, what's in the Shane Sweeney?
Yeah, it would have to be a gin-based thing. I feel, because I think that helps to keep me grounded.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's. I would have said a little bit of sweet because you're a really good family guy. A little bit of sour, and dump that
My
into
wife
a
would agree there.
lager.
Yeah,
Yeah, dump that
yeah,
into a lager, and you're ready to go.
sure.
For the
Why
for
not?
yeah. Next question. Yeah, what's your guilty pleasure app or gadget? One of the gadgets or apps that you love but hate admitting.
I actually really like that new game, Monopoly Go, because it
Oh,
helped me.
okay.
It's like you just keep on tapping. It doesn't require too much thought. It's just something that
Yeah.
relaxes my mind.
Yeah, I actually, it's funny you said that. I was thinking that earlier today. I had to take a step away from my computer, and the first thing I open up is that app Wordscapes. where you have to spell the words. So it's your brain turns to mush after so much, and you just kind of need to like decompress. So, all right, next one. If you get an all access pass to any sporting event in the world, where are you going and who's coming with you?
I actually I do like I'm a big I am an F1 fan to the extent where I think they're very extravagant events that are just very exciting, and the being part of the crowd at one of them is fantastic. I do at one point do want to go to a Super Bowl
Mm.
because I think it's a key moment. Uh, in actual fact, it's probably like a World Cup final again, something that I could bring my family to. My kids are big into soccer.
And, well, who would you take with you?
At this moment in time, I actually think I picked my family because I think it's a key moment that is for all of us. And yeah, I think they're who I do this for, and therefore, if it's my favorite thing if it's my favorite sporting event that I want to be at, I couldn't ask for anybody else to be there. So.
I believe that actually. So you and I had the opportunity to go to the Indy 500, what, 2 years ago, several years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and you got to bring a guest, and you brought your dad, and I thought that
Yeah.
was really special because he's big into racing, into Indy and F1 as well. So that's pretty great. All right, last question. I know these haven't been super rapid fire, but if your leadership had a theme song that played when you walked into a meeting, what would it be? This is your team.
It has to be Eye of the Tiger. I feel I know it's a bit of a cliche, but like yeah.
That's it. That's all I have for rapid fire. Shane Sweeney from FanDuel. It's absolutely been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us on our first edition of Parallel Perspectives. You are a superhero at work. You're a superhero at home. And I'm absolutely honored to not just have you on the podcast, but to have you as a friend. And once we hang up here, let's go grab a beer.
No, sounds great, and really appreciate the invite, and it's been a fantastic conversation, and hopefully people listen.
Yeah. Thanks again.